I just got back from New York.
Right.
And we did a lot of stuff. We went to the Empire State Building. We went to the 9/11 Memorial.
Sure.
We went to Katz's Delicatessen and got, the pastrami on rye.
I'll pretend to know what that is.
Katz's Delicatessen. You've seen When Harry Met Sally?
No.
Oh, okay. But you know the famous scene, the I'll have what she's having scene.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
that was set in Katz's Delicatessen.
Gotcha.
And we went to a Broadway play. We went to actually see the Michael Jackson play.
Ooh.
And here's some things that I did do at the play.
Oh, no.
I got a drink called the Manhattan in the Mirror, which is their version of Manhattan.
Oh, that's great.
I sat quietly in my seat. And I sang along to the songs, but I did so respectfully. And I enjoyed the show, and I did not get kicked out because here are some vital things if you don't want to get kicked out of a theater. A, don't be disruptive. B, don't vape in there. And C, don't fondle your date at a children's play.
Okay. All ages play. It wasn't just for children.
It was Beetlejuice.
Okay. Beetlejuice has some adult stuff in it.
Yeah, so does SpongeBob. My point is...
Fair.
When you go to a theater, there's some very basic rules that I feel like everyone abides by, and no one needs them explained to them. To them.
You would be surprised how many people
I certainly
need the whole put your phone away thing.
I'm speaking more to the don't have sexual contact with
your partner,
your seat neighbor.
Yeah.
Which apparently is something that U.S. Congress members don't understand.
Well, I guess...
One Congress member in
singular.
particular.
I was thinking maybe there's like an off-color joke that we could use to make members plural, but the other person involved was not a Congress member.
No, from what I understand, he was like a Tinder rando.
I don't know about that. And
I don't know. I think that might just be a joke, but honestly, I wouldn't be surprised.
No, so we know who the guy is, and it's fascinating. Really? Yeah. So for those of you who are not keeping up with what on earth we're talking about, the first thing that we wanted to mention tonight was freaking Lauren Boebert, who is a Republican representative. She's not a senator.
Yeah, right? She's representative from Western Colorado.
Right. And she's not only Republican, but she's willingly associated herself with the far right movement in Congress.
Yeah, she's like a QAnon person.
Right.
Her ex-husband or soon-to-be ex-husband is a convicted pedophile.
I don't know. Ooh, it's a nice ringtone. I don't know if he's a pedophile. I know he's a sex offender. I thought it was public indecency.
Yes, 2 underage girls.
Ah, okay. Well, then, yeah that would... Sure.
Yeah, he exposed... He tried to get them to look at his tattoo that he has on his penis. And then when they wouldn't look, he just showed it to them.
You know what? I gotta say, pun intended, that man has got to have some balls if he can get a tattoo on his penis. I think I'm too wimpy to get a tattoo anywhere on my body.
Right, yeah.
Let alone the most sensitive part of my body.
I don't know, I've heard that the elbows and the backs of the knees are painful, but I'm not sure if I think the amount of people that have experience with different areas is less so, or like the pain associated with different areas for a tattoo is less so for, genitals.
Anyway, so Lauren Boebert, she, I don't want to keep talking about genitals. Lauren Boebert is in the process of getting a divorce, and she is, before she was a congressman, or congresswoman, before she was a congresswoman, she like runs this bar where employees and patrons are encouraged to open carry firearms.
I think it was called Rifles or something
like that. And she obviously is going through this difficult family time. I'm not going to say that divorce is easy, having never been one. You've been divorced, but obviously that's going to take a toll on your mental. She's going through the process. Oh, I see what you're saying.
No, I'm talking about you.
Oh, yeah. Well, hopefully never, right? We're working to make that a never thing. But, like, I don't understand why she would do those things and then blame it on her ongoing divorce. Because, I understand she could be distraught, obviously, but I think that's there's some whack things that she did that are on camera that you can see, like, the guy she's with full on grabs her breasts, and it's like, it's like a dwarf in Lord of the Rings digging for gold. Like,
it was
it's
aggressive,
disturbing,
to say the least. I think there's two important things to remember here. One, she has the emotional maturity of a adolescent. If you look at the video of her like being escorted out of the lobby and everything,
she's flipping them out, doing the finger waggle.
Turns around and just with the sound off, you can tell that she's saying, "Do you know who I am?"
Right.
Like her body language is just spoiled teenager who didn't get her way. The other thing is that I think it's pretty clear. Maybe not to you because you don't have experience with this, but as somebody who does have experience with alcohol, she was drunk and her inhibitions were lowered, and I'm assuming her date was in a similar state, and so they weren't really, I don't think, aware of or really paying attention to the inappropriateness of their behavior, but also like it. I've always gotten the vibe of like sorority party girl from her. And I think that that's kind of backed up by her, the possibility that she may have made a career out of that persona. And that's possibly why she was even elected to the House in the first place. Is because some people claim, and I think might be a credible claim, that she was an escort to politicians, and that's how she got the connections, that Ted Cruz being one of them, that eventually led her to running for office. But I think that this is very much typical behavior of her, and I think that it just kind of goes to show you like just the level of immaturity and lack of judgment that she has just in her day-to-day life.
So real quick, I just Googled Lauren Boebert escort, and that is incorrect. It was being pushed out by a Democrat super PAC. Mm-hmm. But everything I'm seeing is saying she's wrong. Even the Colorado Sun wrote an article where the headline is, let me see the full one, Lauren Boebert is a train wreck, but the sexism against her has got to stop. Yeah.
Sure.
So that's not true, but I can see the persona of
it's
sorority.
Not substantiated, I would say.
No, everything I'm seeing is saying that it's not true.
But what are they basing that off of?
Fact checking, saying it's unproven allegations.
Yeah, unproven allegations.
Okay, well, I can walk in and say, dude, you're smoking pot right now, and I have no evidence for it, but this is a podcast, and so unless people are on YouTube watching, they have no idea of which one of us would be correct, right?
Right, but we
would assume innocent until proven guilty.
You can use context clues, though, to make inferences. And that's why I'm saying that, they're unsubstantiated claims. It wouldn't surprise me, though. And she did spend an inordinate amount of time with powerful political people
I don't think that's enough reason to say that she was an escort for them.
Sure, but it does seem, and I totally understand that may be a sexism based claim.
Sure.
And I certainly don't want to do that, but it does seem odd that she would, without any kind of relevant experience, be touted as this, great addition to the House of Representatives by incumbent members, she happened to spend a lot of, free time, quote unquote, free time with.
Yeah, but I feel like that's just making connections, getting feet in the door for fundraising. Look at Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She very much did similar or not the same things with, Democratic leaders prior to her run against an incumbent. And won.
Right, but she had an outward interest in politics beforehand. And to my knowledge, Lauren Boebert really didn't.
I don't know enough about her to say yes or no. What I do know, and I going back to like who her companion was at this, because this is what I think is the most interesting. Lauren Boebert, as you know.
Yeah. Tell me about him, because I don't know anything about him.
Yeah, so as you know, Lauren Boebert has been very outspoken against like drag shows and gay rights and LGBTQIA issues and trans issues. And the guy who she was with is the owner of a gay bar who hosts drag shows.
Interesting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
That she knew going in.
Yeah. No, that doesn't surprise me at all, because it's, again, I don't think that she has any interest in being in politics. I don't think that she believes the bullshit that she, says. I think that it's just about getting attention and being, divisive.
Right. I think it's hilarious that she spends all this time saying that people who promote LGBTQ, whatever, plus trans, everything issues, all of this community's issues are groomers. And then there she is, arguably
getting felt up at a family friendly.
Right.
Yeah.
By one of these people. The name of his bar is Hoochcraft Cocktail Bar.
Okay.
So
not a great name, but it's not a terrible name.
As someone who doesn't go to bars, I wouldn't know.
I mean, but you can tell that, like, what a good business name is, right?
Yeah, it's no Prancing Pony, that's for sure.
That's true.
Or Green Dragon. Yeah.
Or Bridge Inn. There's 6 named
in Lord of the
pubs.
Rings.
Or no, there's 7 named pubs in Lord of the Rings.
Okay, here they are. The Green Dragon, the Golden Perch, the Ivy Bush.
Yeah.
The Ivy Bush, I feel like if it were made today, would be a gay bar. I don't know. I feel like that's a gay bar name.
Okay.
I don't know.
Maybe.
Like the Golden Perch would maybe be like a Trump-owned one. That would be something he used to make fun of the Golden Ring allegations.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's the Bridge Inn, the Floating Log, and All Welcome Inn.
Oh, that's right. The All Welcome Inn.
All of those are in the Shire.
Yes. And then there's a Prancing Pony, which I think is the only other one.
And the Forsaken Inn.
Where's that one?
East of Bree.
Ah. Oh, that's right, because they say something about the road east of Bree is ended at the Forsaken Inn, like in terms of from the Shire's perspective.
Right. Anyway, so back to Lauren Boebert.
Yes.
The Goblin.
Yeah.
I want to say...
I just want to make clear, personally, I'm not meaning to disparage any kind of sex work. What I more was speaking to is the disingenuous nature that she is doing her current job,
yeah,
while just like attacking, primarily the trans community for like trying to indoctrinate kids, or at least subjecting kids to inappropriate sexual, conduct.
Right.
And yet her husband, before they were married and while she was with him, exposed himself to underage girls. And then now this whole thing with the theater.
So I wonder, it makes me wonder how much of it is just politicking to get elected and how much of it is real conviction.
I think
like showboating versus actual positions that she holds.
I think they go hand in hand. I don't think she's smart enough to actually be like conniving enough to kind of be duplicitous in that way. It like meaning that like she might that it's purely tactical and it's purely strategic. I think that she is definitely doing the thing that's going to get her the most attention.
Sure.
Or and I'm not necessarily talking about the theater thing. I think that was just poor judgment. And
no, but you're talking about like her stances and her vocalizations of beliefs.
Yeah, and just how ridiculous she is. I think that it's attention seeking, but I think that informs the actual positions that she has. And so whatever she gets the most attention, gets the most attention for, that's the thing that becomes her actual position.
Sure.
So it doesn't have to go like, it's not subject to any pre-existing moral code or something. It's just what is convenient.
That's a pretty standard political practice right now, especially for people seeking their first election. You're going to latch on to whatever you can if you're going to beat that incumbent, or if you're going to beat the opponent in a contestable district. And I don't know what the demographics of her district are, so I don't know if it was a solid red or if she had to fight for her position.
She lost her last election by less than 600 votes.
Wow.
Yeah, It was very, very close.
So then that would make a lot of sense.
Cost her the next election.
Yeah, so then that makes a lot of sense to me, because
she just had a lot of funding.
Right. And if I were her running in a state district that was so contestable, you're going to want to appeal to whatever's getting you the most amount of votes. So that would make sense to me if she's not actually buying into what she's saying.
I think she is, though. I don't necessarily know if she would be buying in if it wasn't the thing that was getting her.
But I think her actions, actions speak louder than words. And if she's genuinely saying these people are groomers and pedophiles and all this stuff, but then she goes on a date with one in public, and has this experience that she does with him in public.
Yeah.
It makes me think, okay, so you don't think they're groomers and pedophiles? Because if you did, I think on a date with one.
I think she does. I think she has convinced herself that she does think that they're groomers and pedophiles, while also lacking any moral backbone or awareness of her own actions. I think that she legitimately does think that transgender people, or people in the LGBTQIA community, are pedophiles. I think that she's just again immature, and she has no actual moral code, that, at least not one that's of any substance. And so it's okay for her to do, because because at least she's not gay. Which feels even like sarcastically, that feels gross saying.
Yeah. So you know who else I think has no moral backbone? You're not gonna like this.
Who?
Take a guess. Take a guess who you think I'm gonna say. I'll give you a hint. It's also someone in the House of Representatives.
Oh, okay. I was thinking of people from high school.
Oh my gosh! So no, good. I'm not that rude. Down.
Well, I don't know. Now I am actually thinking of people in high school that I would think that about. No one really comes to mind. Someone in the House of is it Kevin McCarthy?
No.
Oh, interesting.
Although he's probably up there too.
Yeah. Oh gosh, somebody else in the House of Representatives, or I guess, yeah, he's in the House of Representatives. Someone in the House who has no moral backbone.
Who I think has no moral
Who
backbone.
you think has no moral backbone?
You might think they do. I don't know.
I don't know that I really know that many people in the House of Representatives.
You got to know this one. Everybody knows this one. I'll give you a hint.
Okay.
Her name starts with N and ends with Nancy Pelosi.
Oh God. Doesn't really narrow it down. Is it Clancy Pelosi?
Starts with an N.
Well, the N is silent.
Oh, you're right. I forgot. Yes, yeah. It is. It is.
Cousin to Nancy Pelosi. Wait, is it Nancy Pelosi?
I cannot stand Nancy Pelosi. Like, here's the thing. I am able, I think, to put aside my disagreements with a lot of people and look at the person and the purpose. For example, I disagree.
Would you say you're able to agreeably disagree?
Yes. No, I for example, I look at AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I do not agree with her on very much, but I do think she is actually there to help American people in her own way. Yeah. I think she is there for a good reason. Nancy Pelosi, I do not think that about. I disagree with her on most things. I think she is there to make money and have power. And she even said the reason she's running for re-election is to be able to raise more money for the Democratic Party.
Yeah. Which I think, so here's two comments that I have on that. A, I think as part of the Democratic leadership, that is kind of inherently her job. But B, I wouldn't say that I necessarily disagree with you. I think that Nancy Pelosi started her career in a very similar position as AOC and wanting to do the right thing, for the right reasons. And I think she's just been a career politician for so long that, it's kind of a, absolute power corrupts absolutely kind of dynamic. I still agree with a lot of her positions. But, I also am kind of dissatisfied, particularly with her, with certain tax things, and also her just combativeness with the whole, stock, congressional stock trading thing.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
But I think part of it, at least from my point of view, part of, the things that you're talking about that you have a problem with, I think are kind of just inherent with, being high up in the Democratic leadership.
See, but if the whole thing is about raising money for the party, there are other ways that she can do that. She can still campaign and hold fundraisers for the Democratic National Committee or for the Democratic Party, or she can start a super PAC and run a super PAC to raise money for the person who is going to be succeeding her in her district or the person she thinks should. She doesn't have to run for a nth term just because she wants more money for the Democratic Party, because I don't buy that. Well, she's been in office.
But she is also running because she wants to remain the incumbent. But I'm not. But she's been in since
1987.
Yeah, she's been in for a long time, and I'm not saying that I would like her to continue. I don't want any more Dianne Feinsteins. I don't want more Robert Byrds. I don't want people who are staying in elected offices well past their ability to faithfully and what's the word, not coherently but effectively execute their position.
Right. Well, and I'm not a huge Mitt Romney fan, but I do love that he just recently said, I'm not running for re-election because I'm going to be in my mid-80s by the time that term ends.
Yeah.
And then just kind of is like, we all should be doing that. Young people are the ones who are going to be in charge soon. We need to let them be in charge. The young people are the one who all of these policies are going to affect. They should be the ones making those policies.
Yeah. No, I have a lot of respect for him doing that. I will say I am a little dubious. There's a part of me that, and I, in general, I do like Mitt Romney. At least as far as Republicans go, I like Mitt Romney.
Yeah, I just don't agree with him on everything.
Yeah, I certainly don't either. There is a part of me, and maybe this is more of the, skeptic side of me, that wonders how much of that is, obviously I don't think Mitt Romney would ever endorse Trump. I also don't think that he's going to want, to endorse Biden. And so I think maybe this is motivated by his distaste for Trump, but also his lack of, or his unwillingness to support Biden. And so he's kind of sending a message to conservatives being like, hey, why don't we vote for somebody who's not these two old white men, because I don't want either one of them. And it's not necessarily as genuine of a,
sure,
like we should get young people more involved message as maybe it's being portrayed.
I mean, I can see it being both. I think,
I in fairness, I could too. It's
I think there is one leading to the other. I think you've got those candidate frustrations for sure. Because if I were in his position, I know I would be frustrated with those choices.
I think there's a lot of Republicans, even just part of the constituency that feel those same frustrations.
Right. But I also do think it did not surprise me that he was doing it. It surprised me the timing. I feel like, because I didn't realize how old he was already. And so for him to say I'll be in my mid 80s by the time this term ends, I'm like,
right. And he's running for Senate. So it's 6 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he is, how old is he actually?
I don't know. He looks good for whatever age
he's 76.
Yeah. He looks really good. He's 76 he's taking for sure. Care of himself.
It's, it's that Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints word of wisdom, no smoking, alcohol, tobacco, all that kind of stuff.
Oh God, is that why I look so terrible?
No, that's just genetics.
I mean, I've got a Doctrine and Covenants. I did finally buy one, and it's around here somewhere.
Oh, one of ours or one of yours?
One of ours. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, you showed me that last time. Yeah.
Did I? Yeah, it's somewhere, but it's over on my shelf there.
But I just, man, I am tired of. I feel like the House, Congress in general. I feel like Congress in general has too much of the power, but I also feel like the president has too much power. And I don't think this is an option. I don't think this is something that, to me, would be solved by giving it to another branch. I think it would be something that needs to be solved by giving more power back to the states.
Yes, and okay, so I would agree on the Congress thing. I think the legislative branch does have too much power. There are times when I think the presidency has too much power, but there's also definitely times where I feel like the presidency doesn't have enough power. Student loans is one thing where I was really frustrated by the lack of power that the president actually has.
See, but at the same time, the Constitution does specifically, as much as I want my student loans wiped out and don't want to have to pay that, right. The Constitution does specifically say that financial matters are to the Congress.
Exactly. Yeah. And Biden can't unilaterally make that decision without congressional approval.
Right.
I think it's a lot more frustrating though, when you think about the things that Trump technically couldn't do without congressional approval, or George Bush couldn't do without, congressional approval, such as an unjustified war. And yet they did it anyway.
Right. By calling it a conflict.
Yeah. I mean, it was semantics. But I think it is frustrating when you look at the abuses of power by presidents that, I guess the abuses of power from presidents that I haven't agreed with, and then seeing a president that I do agree with, not also like using that same abuse of power for things that I would like him to do them for, simply because he's not willing to do that. And I can't argue with that, because I don't want a president that's going to abuse the power. But also, again, like you said, I would like my student loans gone. I would like to not be bankrupt by, an ambulance ride should I need it. But I do have a problem with the states' rights thing, because I think a lot of times, historically, states' rights have been utilized to negate the, or simply to find a loophole to being required to provide human rights.
Sure.
So I think, take the most obvious example, the Civil War. Everyone talks about it, states' rights. Well, it was about states' rights to do specifically one thing.
Sure.
And, obviously, like, we, it was wrong to leave the question of slavery to states' rights, because slavery should just not be acceptable at all. I think similarly, things like gay marriage, abortion rights, and I'm just talking about myself, things like that there shouldn't be an avenue through which states can make up their own mind about those fundamental rights. And I think it's really disgusting what's going on in, Florida and Texas, where there are literal bounties being put on people who are, going to states where those rights are granted.
Yeah, I don't agree with that, but I think that,
with that meaning the practice of
going after people in other states, right? Because that is part of the reason why we are a federation, is the ability to go to other states for purposes that you would want, and that's part of what the federal government's job is. One of the things I take issue with a lot when it comes to presidential power is executive orders.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at which presidents give out executive orders the most, two things stand out to me.
Mm-hmm.
One is that presidents...
They're primarily Democrats.
Primarily Democrats. That's not what I was going to lead with, but yes, up until recent years, actually. But primarily Democrats have given out the most, both on average and in total.
Mm-hmm.
But what I think is also more interesting is these presidents that are often criticized as being power hungry by either party are also using them more frequently than ones who aren't. So, for example, George W. Bush, being criticized for being power hungry during the Iraq War, issued a total of 291 executive orders.
Mm-hmm.
President Obama, 276, also deemed by Republicans as being rather by Republicans as being rather power hungry. Donald Trump.
So here's the difference that I would say specifically for Obama's presidency. I think he had one of the most embattled terms that we've ever seen.
I agree.
I think he would have gotten nothing done had he not had executive privilege.
I will concede that.
Orders.
Now, here's the thing. Both of those two presidents had 8 years, and they gave out 291, 276. President Trump, in 4 years, gave out 220.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. Because he never had respect for for the due process that needed to be involved.
Okay, but President Biden is on track to do the same. He is at 2.5 years in, and he's at 123 already.
Because he has to undo all the bullshit that Trump did.
No, a lot of it doesn't have to do with stuff that Trump did. I mean, think about the executive orders he did for student loans.
Yeah, because it's not like Trump is the only thing that was wrong with the country.
I agree, but if you're going to say that all of these things are things that all these executive orders are things that he did are because of Trump, there needs to be substance behind that. I don't know that checks out.
Then I'll amend that. He had to undo everything that had been done previously under other administrations.
Sure.
I think we're at a point where, especially with just within Biden's presidency, the legislature is extremely combative and kind of just on both sides disagreeing for the sake of disagreeing. And so, again, in order to get anything done, Biden, I think, does have more of a legitimate reason to resort to executive orders. And whether you agree with them or not, I think for the most part, he has done them within the privileges that are provided to him by the Constitution.
So I will say, looking over the list of recent ones, most of them are just proclamations. They're not actually creating laws or policy like a lot of other ones are. Like there's, within just September, proclamation on National Voter Registration Day, on Constitution and Citizenship Day, and Constitution Week, on National Farm Safety and Health Week, right? But then there's also memorandum on presidential determination and certification with respect to the Child Soldiers Prevention Act of 2008. So like, it's not all just like proclamations. There are some that he's doing that change policy, but all of this is shadowed by Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who averaged 307 per year and totaled 3,721 executive orders.
But again, a president who got shit done and would not have without that ability.
Okay, but let's also remember that some of these executive orders are interning of Asian people.
Sure. That's, I mean, absolutely. Manzanar is a atrocity, and one that our nation, and not just Manzanar, all of the other camps, that is a definite black mark on our nation's legacy, and one that we need to, one that shouldn't be forgotten, I think.
Right. But compare that to other wartime presidents like Kennedy, Johnson, and Nixon. Each only have 214, 325, and 346, respectively.
Well, Kennedy didn't have as much time.
That's true.
Nixon also didn't have as much time.
He was in for he got elected to 2 different terms.
Well, yeah, but I mean, his 2 terms were cut short.
Johnson and Nixon were in for approximately the same amount of time, and they have approximately the same number of orders.
Right. No, I'm not disputing that, but I think that I do think FDR is a special case because he was dealing with first the Depression,
sure,
and then World War II, obviously. And I think those are 2 things where drastic decisions have to be made, and you don't have the luxury of going through the arduous process of congressional approval. And it's kind of a political, because Congress does have the ability to, veto an executive order. I think it's by 2/3 majority. But it's kind of a case of better to ask forgiveness than permission.
Sometimes yes, and sometimes when you're playing with people's lives, I would say no.
Certainly.
But here's an interesting tidbit. All right, so the only president that I can see to not give out any was William Henry Harrison, but he was also in for 0.08 years. He died of pneumonia or a cough or something that he caught
3 months
at his inauguration speech. Yeah. But until
he died at his inauguration,
not in it. So he was told, wear a coat for your inauguration. It's cold and rainy outside. And he said, leave me alone, woman, to his wife, and went out and gave a 3-hour speech in the rain. And then got
That's
sick
also
and died.
Not how people get sick, but
that is how he died. He got pneumonia from cold exposure.
You don't catch a virus from cold exposure. You catch a virus from elsewhere, and cold exposure diminishes your immune system, but cold does not carry a virus.
Yes, this is true.
Or bacterial infection.
Hold on, I'm looking at William Henry Harrison. His son's house is out here in Indianapolis, and so they have the whole story here. It doesn't matter. Anyway, so until the end of William McKinley's term, only one president came close to or broke 200 executive orders, and that was Grant.
Okay.
Since William McKinley...
Again, president during Reconstruction.
Right. I think so, that one makes sense to me.
I think it makes as much sense as FDR, certainly, but also I think
3,000
makes sense for Obama, who was president after the next biggest financial crisis since the Depression.
If you look at it in the context of the financial crisis, if a lot of his executive orders are related to the financial crisis, then yes.
Which I think a lot of them were.
I would have to look into
some of them were Fast and Furious, which I'm not so keen on, but then I think Biden also, you look at I'll go out on a limb and I will say that I think the 4 years of the Trump presidency were as damaging, if not more damaging, than at least the 2008 recession, or as damaging as maybe not. I think it gets close to as damaging as, the Civil War or the Depression.
No. I'm going to definitely push back on that.
I think it gets closer. I'm not saying it is as close. I'm saying it's far closer than any other presidency.
No, I would still push back on that and look at Nixon's era of the Vietnam War, like how he fought against protesters. I would look at the Red Scare. I think you've got. I think it would be pushing it.
Okay,
I think that's a lot of hyperbole. But
it could be.
President Trump actually had the least amount of executive orders since the 1980s.
Who was the president after Hoover?
Hoover? Let me see.
Yeah.
Hoover. Roosevelt.
Okay. Well, okay. So that, I think that adds credence though to what I'm saying though, is that the Red Scare, I mean, Hoover was president for a large portion of that.
Sure.
And contributed significantly to the eventuality of the Depression. I mean, think of Hoovervilles.
Yeah. Yep.
And so I think there is a correlation of presidents who are coming into a bad situation, which you cannot deny that the Trump presidency at least was a very bad situation for the country. I think
bad situation in some ways, but it's pretty subjective in whether or not it's bad, because you look at today, Americans are spending $700 a month more right now than they did under Trump.
Yes, but how much of that is because of policies that Trump enacted?
You could argue that
and how much of that has to do with inflation because of, or quote unquote, because of the pandemic, when really it was just companies.
I would say two things here. You can definitely make the argument that policy change takes a couple of years to be felt.
Mm.
However, Biden has been in long enough that we can point directly to some of the policies that have happened underneath him. Some of which are on purpose and some of which were going to happen under Trump as well, like student loan repayments, for example. Like, that's going to affect the economy. It's going to happen eventually, no matter who the president is.
Sure.
But he's been in long enough that we could easily point to his administration as having similar effects. I mean, look at his shutting down of the Keystone Pipeline. Immediately after that, I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing, but immediately after that, fuel prices and energy prices go up. You look at him stopping fracking, again, energy prices go up.
When did he shut down that pipeline?
That was like one of the first things he did when he got into office.
So in 2021?
That was one of his first executive orders. Yeah.
Give me a date on that, though. Because, or at least a date on when the fuel prices shot up, because at least in my area, and the West Coast has some of the higher fuel prices because we're further away from sources. I really didn't feel that effect until the Russian invasion in 2022.
Oh, are you kidding me? When I was in Alabama, we had gas prices that were less than $2 a gallon. And then pretty soon after he goes into office, significantly higher. When I moved here to Indianapolis area, gas prices were in the 270, 280. Pipeline gets shut down, and now they're literally $1 a gallon more.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I personally think that the pipeline being shut down was the right decision.
Right. You can make that cost benefit analysis of gas prices versus, the climate,
right,
and, ecological impact. You can totally make that cost benefit analysis. I'm not going to say it is or isn't worth it, but there is that direct impact.
Sure.
What I think is the coolest thing about all of this, though, is there have only been 2 presidents since William McKinley to have less than 200 executive orders.
Really?
One of them is Gerald Ford, who comes in at 169 at 2.5 years in office. And George Bush Sr. with 166 in 4 years. And since George Bush Sr., Donald Trump has had the fewest.
Yeah. No, I think that kind of makes sense. We should talk about our second topic, though, as much as I would love to.
You're right. This is like a good segue into the second topic, though. So the second thing that we really wanted to talk about is what I feel comfortable saying is the complete BS impeachment allegations that Congress is bringing before President Biden.
No, I think we can both agree on that. And there's a couple reasons, and there's a couple reasons that I think that it's BS. I think you'll agree, but I'm going off of I'm going to reference an article by on NPR.org that's called "In the Tale of 5 Presidential Impeachments, How Does the Latest One Stack Up?" And they pretty succinctly and effectively make the case that this is the first impeachment where it's not it doesn't have anything to do with things that the president has done while they've been in office. There is not any, not even substantial evidence. There is no evidence of the crime that they are accusing him of. And it is the only, or I guess it's, when you look at the time frames between the alleged event and when the impeachment started from at least the last 5 impeachments. Nixon's was 600 days after the alleged event. There was also, evidence of obstruction of justice. Clinton's was 264 days after the alleged event. There was also obstruction of justice and lying under oath. Trump's first one was 61 days after the event, and that I believe was, what was Trump's first impeachment about? Oh, it was for soliciting the Hunter Biden laptop from Ukraine. And then his second one was obviously the January 6th insurrection. Right, yeah. And that was 7 days after that the articles of impeachment were drawn up. With Biden's, the amount of time between the alleged event and when the articles of impeachment were drawn up was 3,431 days.
So almost
about
10 years.
10 years. When he was not the president, they don't have evidence of it. And it has nothing to do with his, even close to his presidency. He was 2 years before his vice presidency. Or was he?
I would say that doesn't bother me as much.
Vice presidency.
Right, it would have been during his vice presidency, and that doesn't bother me as much because, according to USA.gov, the Constitution gives Congress the power to impeach federal officials. So it doesn't matter if you're vice president or not. It doesn't matter necessarily when it happened. I do think timeliness helps.
Sure.
But I also think we weren't necessarily scrutinizing our politicians quite as much, especially our presidents, quite as much as we are now. I think we were criticizing them quite a bit. And I think unfairly so, especially in the case of President Obama, people calling him the Antichrist.
Yeah.
I feel like that's an unfair statement. But I do think that we are way more obsessed with their day-to-day life. And in some ways, that's a good thing. Yeah, because in some ways, that's a good thing because that gives me hope that maybe we'll start trying to elect people who are good people and not just who are people that make noise.
Well, I think that plays into the shift that we've seen in the scrutiny we're seeing now, because there was, I forget his first name, but there was a Congress member with the last name of Hart, I believe, in the late 80s. Not Kevin Hart, and not the late great wrestling legend Bret Hart.
Never heard of that guy. Keep going.
Oh yeah, the La Mancha screw job.
Not helping. I didn't watch wrestling. Keep going. You're good.
I didn't either. This is from an NPR story that I listened to.
Oh, okay.
But also, so is my knowledge of this. I think it was Senator Hart. But he had an outward affair, and it was kind of the first time in U.S. history or U.S. political history where a candidate's personal life was held against them in an election. And since then, we've become increasingly more focused on, whether or not this politician is a good person rather than just a good politician. So it doesn't surprise me that, we're seeing this increasingly over the years, but I definitely think it's way more understandable when you consider who the last president was.
Well, I would also say some of the previous presidents, even before him, like Clinton. I mean, he did a lot of good things as far as bipartisan work, but my gosh, dude gives me the heebie-jeebies.
Sure. And I think that's a fair criticism of him as a person. I don't think Clinton's transgressions, while not excusable, I don't think they impacted his ability to be president. Trump, I would say, it's different.
I don't know. I still think it's an abuse of power.
Certainly. Yeah.
And I think any abuse of power would, in my mind, theoretically disqualify someone. But that also would narrow the candidacy pool down to, like, Jesus.
To no one. Well, and even then, I think, we might be surprised. But I think it's pretty clear. And the reason why I bring up the just the amount of time from the supposed transgression and when they're impeached, the reason why I bring that up is because I think it's pretty clear that Kevin McCarthy is just grasping at straws. He's trying to throw a wrench in the campaign gears for Biden because his guy is going to be just inundated with court proceedings during the campaign trail. And I think that Kevin McCarthy is trying to level the playing field.
So I don't know if Kevin McCarthy is the one starting it. I know that as head of the Senate, he's the one who has to actually do the filing.
Yeah, he's certainly the figurehead of it, whether or not it's his idea. But I'm under the impression that he is definitely gung-ho for it.
Right, but I think it's more, I guess he's over the House, not the Senate, so I misspoke there.
Well, yeah.
I think it's more the fact that a committee is trying to do it, and he has to officially sanction the committee.
Yeah, but as the speaker, he or the whip, I mean, that's the whip's whole job is to whip the party into consensus.
Right.
I think either he or the majority whip could have put a stop to it if they actually wanted to. And I don't get the sense that either one of them did. I don't know, fair, because though, I'm not sure who the whip is right now.
Well, and I think it's less about that and more about the fact that there is a pretty considerably sized well, maybe not considerably sized. There's a considerable number of more far right Republicans in the House right now who he does not agree with. But if he doesn't agree with them, they will stall progress on anything. And so he has to play the unfortunate game of giving them some amount of what they want.
Right.
And
he's got to politic within his own party before he politics.
And that makes it really difficult. The inter-party split is very difficult. Because I will say, like, I disagree with a lot of Democrat standpoints, but I will give them the credit that they are pretty darn unified on their policies and beliefs. Yeah, right now, the Republican Party is not. You have a lot of moderate Republicans, you have a lot of far-right Republicans, and the only thing that's uniting them is the fact that President Trump, former President Trump,
fact that they're not Democrats.
Right, yeah. I mean, and really, Trump is the only person who they think could potentially beat Biden.
And I think they're correct, at least given the current pool of candidates.
Right, and so, like, as an independent, my choices are a party who I disagree with on most things, or a party who I agree with on a lot. I wouldn't say majority, but who can't get their crap together.
Yeah. No, I think that's a fair case. And I will say I'm going to be very surprised if 10 years from now there is not a third party due to a split in Republicans, because the Republicans that we have today are not the Republicans we had, 15, 20 years ago.
I agree, but I think the split would not just pull Republicans. I think it would be a split of moderates.
I think it would. Yeah, I think you'd get some Democrats, not nearly as many as you would from the Republicans. But I think, Democrats like Tulsi Gabbard or Joe Manchin or Kristen Sinema. Actually, I think did Kristen Sinema, she a Republican now?
I don't know. I think the most likely third party to emerge would be a Libertarian Party. And I think you would get a surprising number of Democrats who would join on to that.
Hold on. Sorry, my headphones went out, so I didn't hear any of that.
I said I think the most likely third party to emerge would be a Libertarian Party. And I think you would get a large number of Democrats.
Libertarian Party, but I think
I think it would be the current Libertarian Party.
I don't. I think it would be something totally different.
You think so?
I think you're going to have the far right remain the Republicans, and then I think you're going to have the moderates from majority Republicans, but some Democrats, some, center-leaning Democrats. I think they'd revive something like the Bull Moose Party.
I don't see there being a reviving of anything. I see the far-right Republicans being the ones who are more likely to split because they don't make up the majority of the party.
No, but I think they're the most vocal, and I think they're gonna throw enough of a tantrum that and increasingly gain positions of power within the party, and they're gonna be able to hold on to that Republican, moniker, while the actual Republicans, the ones that are not completely insane, are gonna realize that they need to distance themselves from the Republican persona because it's been so tainted.
I'm gonna switch my position and say I think that you are right, because I think that's what happened to the Democrat Party in the last 10 years.
Could be.
The last 15. Because you look at the Democrat Party of the early 2000s and even the late 90s, the Democrats of Bill Clinton's time is a very different Democratic Party than today.
There's definitely been a push towards Democrats from that time now call themselves either libertarians or progressives. I think there's a definite push to rebrand certain aspects of the Democratic Party to not be associated with Democrats.
I think there's been a huge push in the Democratic Party towards, in the 90s and early 2000s would have been seen as a pretty far left-leaning stuff, but that is now the basic general tenets of the Democratic Party. So I think you're right. Because if you look at the stances on socialism in the 90s and early 2000s, it was like let's not talk about that kind of a thing.
Yeah, because it was still very much on the tail of the Cold War, and socialism was still kind of more of a buzzword than it is today.
Right. And even that aside, the acceptance of Bernie Sanders, someone who went to the Soviet Union, believes that he saw the actual Soviet Union and not some amount of a facade, and came back and said it's better there where there's no food on the shelves than it is here in the United States. At the same time that you've got Boris Yeltsin
I still need to look into.
Dude, you can see it. He talks about it. He still talks about that. And at the same time that he was initially making those comments, you have Boris Yeltsin coming to the United States, seeing the abundance and leaving the Communist Party while still in office.
Well, yeah.
I just think it's just so out of touch, but that's a different thing. No, yeah. I think you're right, though. I think you're right in that the extremists are probably going to lay claim to the parties, each side, because
they're going to ruin it for the rest. People are going to associate Republicans with the most extreme version, and you can't reclaim that title.
Sure,
you can't reinvent it. Once it's been soiled. Now, what I will say though, in terms of this impeachment and Kevin McCarthy specifically, is I don't see him distancing himself whatsoever from that far right base in the Republican Party.
Right. Well, it's because he has to play that politics game. Impeachment. I think deep down he probably is.
I think he wants. I think he believes in what he's doing. I don't think he's just towing the party line. I think he's
I think it's a mix. I think it's a mix. I think he's towing a party line because no matter how you slice it, an impeachment allegation is dicey territory.
I don't think it is anymore. I think the last impeachment that was taken seriously by either side was Clinton's.
I agree, but when I say dicey territory, what I mean politically speaking, because you're going to face pretty general opposition from the other side, whether it's on true allegations or not.
Yeah, but I don't think it matters anymore. I think that the damage that you would be doing by inviting that kind of criticism, I think we pretty substantially demonstrated is inconsequential with the previous two impeachment hearings. I think that the whole concept is a farce now. We couldn't impeach was it Jackson? Andrew Jackson or Andrew Johnson?
No, Jackson, the guy on the 20.
Yeah, for replacing a bunch of cabinet appointments, I think, was it?
Let me Google it. I'm not 100% sure why he was impeached.
Yeah, I want to say it was like doing away with a bunch of public officials.
So he was censured, not impeached.
Oh, okay.
To remove federal deposits from the Second Bank of the United States and firing the Secretary of Treasury, William Duane, in order to do so.
Okay, yeah, it was the firing of the Secretary of the Treasury that I was, yeah. So so that was kind of a bust.
Oh, Johnson was impeached, though, in 1868.
Oh, okay. What was that for?
Accused him of corruption in 1867, in January, and then in November, they produced a bill of impeachment that consisted of a vast collection of complaints against him.
I want to say it was like cronyism or something.
Yeah, it was corruption.
Yeah. Well, anyway, but no impeachment has gone through to actual removal of office.
Right, and it doesn't always have to.
Is the closest. I mean, impeachment doesn't. Impeachment is just the process.
Correct. A consequence can be removal from office, but it's doesn't have to be.
But it's never gotten to that point. Nixon was very close, but he resigned before it could actually be, be decided.
I just love how you've got videos of him saying, "I'm never going to resign." They've got unsubstantiated claims, and the tapes come out. I am resigning.
I am not a crook.
Yeah.
And he's like, actually, peace.
Yeah.
But so you have that. You have, Clinton, who clearly did something wrong. Everyone knew that he did something wrong, still didn't get removed from office.
He was acquitted.
Next time that you have, and then the next time you have an impeachment, it's a pretty grievous transgression. And then, 4 years later, you have another pretty grievous transgression by the same president and impeached for the first time in U.S. history, a second time.
Right.
And nothing happens from it. He is still under investigation for the crimes that were in question during his second impeachment.
Right.
And he still was not removed from office, and he's still eligible to become president. I think that sends a pretty lackluster depiction of the power of impeachment to not just the American public, but to lawmakers. And so I think that on all levels, people aren't taking impeachment as seriously as they were. And this really is just purely a political stunt. I don't think that even Kevin McCarthy has faith that this is going to pan out. I think he just wants it as a distraction from Biden's campaign.
Well, that would make sense. I mean, if it would put both presidents at the same time having to deal with legal issues while on the campaign. So you're right. It would, as you said earlier, it would level the playing field. Yeah. But, man, I don't know. See, the thing is, I don't like very many of these Republican leaders right now enough to know and to listen to what they have to say. Because, I mean, I think it's just kind of a joke right now, and that's sad.
Yeah, I would agree.
I think that there needs to be more talking to each other about what's going on. I think there needs to be more bipartisanship in order to move forward and actually fix a lot of these issues. And this sort of impeachment is only just going to help the stratification of parties.
Absolutely. I don't think either one of I mean, with the exception of the far right, I don't think anyone in the legislature wants Trump to be president. But I do think that at least half of them, meaning Republicans, would rather stick it to Democrats than have a legitimate candidate. And I think that that's really detrimental to any prospect of unity or bipartisanship or actual, progress.
Sure. I can see that. I just wish that we could all chill out.
Yeah. Sing Kumbaya and hold hands. And
I don't want that. No, I'm not going to go that far. People's hands are icky.
Some collaboration would be nice.
Yeah, collaboration would be nice. But at the same time, I see what people cough into their hands and do with their hands. I'm not going to hold their hand and sing Kumbaya. And nobody wants me to sing. Nobody wants me to sing. I'm a drummer for a reason.
Fair enough.
And I'm man enough to admit it, but
I mean, it would be nice if we could actually make progress. I feel like there's so much gridlock. We couldn't even pass a bill to provide veterans with proper medical care.
Right.
And that's something that everyone in the country should be, all for. Try to think of a legitimate excuse to not do that. And yet we almost did not do that simply because we didn't want the other side to win.
Well, we're probably heading towards another government shutdown for the exact same reason.
Yeah, we have, what is it, 8 days left?
Yeah, and the House Republicans are like, we're gonna take the weekend off.
Yeah. Yeah, so my parents actually were just in DC, and I think they were visiting the Capitol building. This is like a couple days ago. I think they were visiting Capitol building a few hours after they decided to end the session early. They did get to go up into the gallery of the House chambers, and it was the only thing that was going on though was Kevin McCarthy with the sergeant at arms like signing some bill or something. But they had just decided to go home and not do their job, which sucks because when I do that, I at the very least just don't get paid.
Right.
And, you know, you would hope that that would be the same for people who have much more important jobs than mine.
Well, democracy is great.
It sucks.
You know, it sucks, but it's better than the alternatives at the same time.
No, I'm all for dictatorship. I just want to be the one in charge.
You want to be the dictator?
Yeah. What if we had a bicameral dictatorship and you and I led? Do you not think that we could do a better job?
No.
Yeah, maybe.
No. We'd be sitting around being like, we would spend just as much time doing nothing and goofing off.
Our national anthem is Separate Ways by Journey.
Exactly. Right. We would spend just as much time doing stuff like that as we would actually trying to do other stuff. And because we disagree on so much of the other stuff, we wouldn't get it done.
But can you imagine, start of every sporting event, how pumped up everyone, players, the crowd, concession workers would be after listening to Separate Ways?
Yeah, that's
true.
It's
not a good idea, but it's not a bad idea.
There are worse.
It's an idea.
There are worse ideas. Yeah.
There are.
Man, I don't know how this is going to end with the impeachment. I
think it's going to fizzle. I think they're going to have nothing, and they're going to, slink away with their tail between their legs, and they're going to, make every effort to just, not
I don't think
have
so.
It brought up.
I think they're going to make a big stink out of nothing, and I don't think it's going to fizzle out. I think they're going to try and bring nothing to the court, and they're going to, or maybe not to the court, to the House, because they're the ones who do the impeachment trials. I think they're going to bring it to them. I think they're going to try and bring it to order as much as they physically can.
But they have nothing. And so I think because they have nothing, it's going to fizzle.
Right. Well, I think in the trial it would fizzle, but they can drag it on for as long as they want.
That's true. That is true.
On that bright and happy note.
Yeah. I think
I think that's a good place to end it.
Yeah, I think so too.
Oh man, why don't you do our closing credits?
I don't even think we did an intro. So I guess I'll start with the intro.
Welcome to Agreeable Disagreements.
Yeah, this has been Agreeable Disagreements, a podcast where two friends from differing political ideologies pick a topic from the week's politics and debate it. I would like to say thank you to Halcyon Club for letting us use their song "This Life is Tough But Fair" as our theme song. That is on their EP Headset Emotions. Also, thank you to all of you for listening. We really appreciate it. Please be sure to like, follow, subscribe, all of that good stuff so that we can hopefully reach more listeners. And do you have a fun fact, or should I do the one that should I go with the one that I got
one?
Before?
I got one.
Okay.
I got one. Yeah, because you had to do both
mine was
the
that
opening.
Cary Grant was just apparently an avid LSD user.
Yeah, which surprised me. I think the one that I would share is that the scent of vanilla that you get in a lot of aerosol sprays.
Okay, this is not true.
It's not. Yes, it is.
I know. No, not anymore. Now what they use is vanillin, which is synthetic vanilla flavor. It is not beaver asshole.
Well, up until very recently,
castor.
It was beaver butt glands that were used to create it.
I mean, yeah, until more recently than you would like. But as a trained food scientist, I can confidently tell you that if you've had vanilla flavored stuff, if it is not actually vanilla bean itself, is just vanillin, which does not come from beaver butts.
But castoreum does, and that was used for a long time.
And it's and that is the only source of that is these glands that beavers have underneath their butts, or maybe it's above their. I don't know the exact placement of the gland.
How dare you not know the exact placement of a beaver gland?
I know. I live in Corvallis, home of the beavers. I study food science.
Yeah, you should know this. For all the beavers that we eat.
Castoreum. I have a cookbook with a recipe for beaver tail on my cookbook or on my bookshelf right now.
You monster.
I think I'm pretty sure it's The Art of French Cooking by Julia Child.
Those monsters, the French. Wait, Julia Childs?
Yeah. I think it's her book. She has a recipe for beaver tail.
Well, now I know what I'm doing my weekend.
Right? Here's a fun fact. I think there was a few years ago where I think she has a recipe for beaver tails and she has a recipe for like duck or orange. And so the winning like mayor of the rival game, formerly called the Civil War game between the ducks and the beavers, the winning mayor would send like either Corvallis or Eugene, the winning mayor would send the other mayor like a copy of the recipe, either duck or beaver, and all of the necessary supplies to make said recipe.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know if that's true. I know that they sent something in relation to these recipes back and forth. I don't know if they sent like a whole like care basket or something, but if nothing else, Julia Child does have a recipe for beaver.
And look at you listeners getting 3 fun facts for this episode.
How lucky are you guys? The things we do because we care about our fans.